Rohini, the mother of Baladev. Also. Mahabhaga, the most fortunate mother of Baladev. Greatly fortunate because of having the opportunity to raise Krishna and Balaram together. Nanda Gopa Abhinandita, being honored by Maharaj Nanda and Mother Yashoda. Vyacharat was busy wandering here and there. Divya, beautiful. Vasa, with a dress. Shrak, thank you, with a garland. Kanta abharana, and with an ornament covering the neck. Ushita, decorated. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The most fortunate Rohini, the mother of Baladev, was honored by Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda, and thus she also dressed gorgeously and decorated herself with a necklace, a garland, and other ornaments. She was busy wandering here and there to receive the women who were guests at the festival. Purport. Rohini, another wife of Vasudev's, was also kept under the care of Nanda Maharaj with her son Baladev. Because her son was imprisoned by Kamsa, she was not very happy. But on the occasion of Krishna Janmashtami, Nandotsava, when Nanda Maharaj gave dresses and ornaments to others, he also gave gorgeous garments and ornaments to Rohini so that she could take part in the festival. Thus, she was also busy receiving the women who were guests. Because of her good fortune in being able to raise Krishna and Balaram together, she is described as Mahabhaga, greatly fortunate. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kalamayam Nadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Vaijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Param Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhavitam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Kamshakaupatarubyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyarevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Hasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, this section of the Srimad Bhagavatam that we're reading now is describing Nandotsava, so the festival happening after Lord Krishna's appearance in this world. And so it's a very big festival in the area, and everyone is participating. And here we have specifically a description of Rohini, who's the mother of Balaram, Baladev, Lord Krishna's brother. And Rohini is actually a wife of Vasudev, who is in prison with one of his other wives, Devaki. But for Rohini's protection, because she was pregnant, Vasudev sent her to be under the care of Nanda Maharaj, and so that she could be with Yashoda and be safer than being in the prison with himself and Devaki. So I found three elements in this purport that I'm trying to discuss, trying to explain and understand a little bit more, because when you just look at the purport, it seems like there's not so much, but there's actually quite a few elements in there that are interesting that we can learn from. And the first thing that I'd like to speak about is that the point of etiquette. So here, if we just read a little bit between the lines of what Srila Prabhupada is saying, and even the way the verse is written, it says that even though, no, it's in the purport. So even though Rohini was without her husband, and her husband was in prison, she was sad. And it's not the etiquette for a wife, for a chaste wife, to dress herself attractively and with ornaments and things like this in the absence of her husband, because normally she does these things for him. But if she's not with him, or to speak of if he's in prison, it's not the proper etiquette for her to do that. And so, because she wasn't very happy and she was alone. But here it says, even despite that, Nanda Maharaj still gave her ornaments and jewels when he was giving to everybody else, so that she could also take part in the festival. So etiquette can be defined in different ways, and there's kind of lots of different layers to it, so, from gross behavior to very subtle things. But generally it's etiquette is the way we behave, the manners we have, the principles that we live by that are acceptable within a set society. So we speak of Vaishnava etiquette, or the etiquette of academia, or that all these different social groups have specific etiquette, and so Vaishnava etiquette is specifically the culture of the devotees, the spiritual culture. And the Vaishnava etiquette is, one thing is that it helps us to act in the mode of goodness, because it kind of regulates our behavior so that we come out of the modes in our everyday actions. But it's also the foundation of spiritual culture. So it's not just mode of goodness, but it's spiritual culture. This is the way we learn to live in a spiritual society in this world, but it's also how devotees interact in the spiritual realm. And so we can give just a few examples of etiquette. There's obviously just arbitrary examples, but for example, in the temple room we don't show our feet or point our feet towards people, towards the deities, or just generally reveal them, or touch someone with our feet is very offensive. We offer obeisances when we come in, and in the Nectar of Devotion, Goswami also develops many other details in the temple room. For example, in front of the deities we shouldn't speak random mundane topics, because we're in front of Krishna. We should glorify him or speak about him, not speak about just, politics or the weather or things like this. So there's so many things. There's just a few examples. Another one is submissiveness in front of superiors, having a humble attitude towards all other Vaishnavas. So that's maybe a bit more subtle than the other ones. It's more about attitude and behavior than actions. So even the way we speak, the way we interact with people, so many things. It's a very vast topic. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but just to give a bit of an idea to those who may not know. And so etiquette is also the culture of respect. It's in the material world, as conditioned living entities, we are driven by envy, and all our actions are selfishly motivated and based on envy, and so that means automatically that our respect for others reduces, because envy and exploitation means we want to take from them, and we do it in a smooth way, but we still want to take from them and get what we want. So that means we lose our respect for others. So Vaishnava etiquette is also a means to relearn how to respect others. At the beginning it's like just following, okay, don't do this, do these guidelines, because it's not spontaneous for us, because we're conditioned in another way. It's also developing the culture of respect and humility. And sometimes this is the tradition, spiritual tradition, or religious traditions in general. Sometimes people argue that why there's so many principles that we need to follow. But Keshava Maharaj gives a nice answer to this. He says, when you drive your car, do you follow the highway code? I was like, well, yes, of course I do. Because it's for your benefit and for everybody else's benefit, and that's actually helpful. It's not to prevent us from being free, or just to be annoying or a burden. It's actually just to make things run smoothly. So in the same way, this is also why we have spiritual behavioral principles. It's not to be a burden or a constraint on us. It's for our benefit, because it will help us commit offences to others, and also generally just developing this attitude of humility and respect, and also just being attentive to what we're doing, not just acting mechanically or absent-mindedly. It also helps us to act consciously. And all this whole attitude also creates a fertile ground in our heart, because Krishna is pleased by that kind of attitude. So Vaishnava etiquette is not just a useful lifestyle, it is also a useful lifestyle, but it's also a means of pleasing Krishna and being able to receive spiritual knowledge, like really receive it in the heart, because Krishna reciprocates based on how we approach him and we approach the devotees. So if we have the proper attitude, he will be pleased, and then he will allow us to understand spiritual knowledge. Spiritual knowledge is not just an intellectual thing, it's Krishna who gives us the realization or understanding. So this behavior is crucial actually for our spiritual progress. And Lord Chaitanya speaks quite a lot about it in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in many places, but one specifically is when Lord Chaitanya is speaking to Sanatana Goswami, and he tells him that maintenance of Vaishnava etiquette is the ornament of the devotee. It's what makes him beautiful and attractive in the eyes of God. And there's just a string of verses in that conversation. Lord Chaitanya continues, if one transgresses the laws of etiquette, people will make fun of him, and thus he is vanquished both in this world and the next. By observing the etiquette, you have satisfied my mind. And then finally, I cannot tolerate transgressions of the standard etiquette. So this is a famous statement, this Vaishnava etiquette is the ornament of the devotee, and it's what makes the devotee beautiful in the eyes of Krishna, and that's what we want, not to become beautiful to the eyes of others, but become beautiful to the eyes of Krishna. And in this, one of the verses here that is cited, if one transgresses the laws of etiquette, people make fun of him. So this brings in another aspect that this culture is for our own spiritual benefit, so that we are in the right kind of state of mind to receive spiritual knowledge. It's also to learn to respect the other devotees that we live with and be a good example and be kind to them and uplifting. But also it's a preaching tool, because if we behave properly and respectfully towards people who come, who we meet, this will inspire them and enthuse them and attract them to Krishna consciousness, because they see that, well, these people are so nice, they're so respectful, they're kind, they care about me. So there's also this element. So Srila Prabhupada, in a letter, he writes that we must all become ideal in character, because then people will become very impressed by such purity. So that's just a little introduction about the importance of etiquette. And like I was saying at the beginning, here we have Rohini, who was generally observing the etiquette of not dressing herself very opulently because her husband was away. But in this specific example, she is actually, in a sense, transgressing the etiquette, because she's dressing herself very, very nicely, because Nanda Maharaj gave her these clothes and ornaments. So in this case, she's deciding to discard the rule for a higher principle. And the higher principle is to give pleasure to Nanda and Yashoda, because they've just had Krishna as their child, so they're happy, they're celebrating. And they want everybody else to be happy and everybody else to be able to participate in the celebrations, including Rohini. And so for that reason, to please them, and also because she had a service, which was, she was busy wandering here and there, receiving the women who were guests at the festival. So she also had a service to perform. So for those higher principles, she discarded the strict rule for this higher principle. So, like I said, etiquette is essential and is our foundation, and we should really learn to be grounded in that and follow it, but also try to integrate it. That becomes natural by understanding the purpose of everything we do. But also the ultimate purpose of etiquette is not just to follow a set of rules and to have coded behavior, but the purpose of etiquette is to please the heart of Krishna, to please the heart of the devotees, and to please the heart of all others who we may encounter. And indeed, in the Nectar of Instruction, there's this verse, Achahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha jana samhascha loyamcha sadbir bhakti vinashyati. So I won't give the whole translation, but it's basically describing six activities which spoil our devotional service. And specifically the fourth one is practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations and working independently or whimsically. So the word niyamagraha, it actually has these two meanings, both being too strict and adhering to the rules, and also rejecting the rules whimsically. And so we also have to understand this, that in terms of the etiquette, that we shouldn't just follow for the sake of following, for the sake of belonging to a social group to kind of fit in, but also just not discard them whimsically, but understand the purpose. And so the purpose is to have loving relationships and to please the hearts of the devotees of Krishna. And so in some cases, we need to go beyond that. I found a quote by His Holiness Kadamba Kanana Maharaj. This is like exactly the quote that he wrote. It is to be remembered that relationships are based on conquering one another, and it is in that way that we are able to spread this Krishna consciousness movement. We conquer people not through some technique or fixed process, but simply by making an effort and displaying great qualities. Love means you have to do something to capture me if you want me to love you. Real love is based on conquering. We have to do something that is really dear to someone else if we want to conquer them. That is the basis of love. That is the basis of the spiritual world. So I thought that was really inspiring and really shed a very nice light on this topic, that etiquette, facilitates relationships and should be a catalyst for developing loving relationships. But here we really can understand that it's about the heart that we put in the actions and the attitude. We are trying to conquer each other to have loving relationships with the devotees and with Krishna also. So to conquer someone's heart is more, like Maharaj says, it's more than a technique or just a mechanical thing. And so just strictly adhering to rules cannot bring us to that. There has to be another element. There has to be the element of like some emotional input there, or just protocol. And so the goal of our life is to conquer Krishna's heart so that he will accept us despite all our faults and shortcomings and offenses. But in a sense, even more importantly, is to conquer his devotees, his pure devotees, and all other devotees, because Krishna tells us in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Mad Bhakta Puja Abhyadika, that I am more pleased when you worship an devotee. And Srila Prabhupada, in a purport of the fourth canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, in the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj, because there's the Suruchi, his stepmother, made an offense to Dhruva Maharaj, so that's why Prabhupada is then talking about pleasing and displeasing devotees. So he writes that a Vaishnava is especially favoured by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pleasing him or displeasing him directly affects the pleasure and displeasure of the Supreme Lord. And so, like Prabhupada explains here, that the way we treat devotees is a direct connection with how we are treating and relating with Krishna. So sometimes we have high goals of loving and serving Krishna, but we don't act properly with each other. So that is displeasing to Krishna, actually. And so we have to be able to apply principles of behavior with intelligence and with heart, and in some cases, and actually many cases I found in the scriptures, sometimes we have to go beyond the rules, like Rohini. So now I'd just like to spend a little bit of time, because I like sharing pastimes. So I'll just go through quite a few pastimes that illustrate the different situations. So we can have, for example, a couple of examples in Chaitanya Charitamrita of perfect display of etiquette, which is appropriately used and is pleasing to the Lord. So a very famous example is when Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis meet with Lord Chaitanya, and they are very, very, very learned scholars, very intelligent, very highly respected, very wealthy. They have very high positions in the government. They come from Brahminical families. They have so much to be proud of, but yet in front of Lord Chaitanya, they're just complete humility. Complete humility. And they are demonstrating this feeling of a kinshana, that I have nothing, my Lord. And they say, you know, we have all these things, but we don't even know who we are. And because of that attitude, Lord Chaitanya was so pleased with them. Actually, he tells them, please stop, you're breaking my heart. You've conquered my heart, you're breaking my heart, so stop this humility. But because of that attitude, it's them that he chose to reveal the whole science of devotional service to the world through all the books that they wrote. So in that case, they were perfectly following the etiquette, and it was perfectly pleasing to Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya also shows us personally by his relationship with his spiritual master, Ishvara Puri, where he appears he presents himself as a complete fool in front of him. And even when his spiritual master corrects him, he said, oh, yes, I'm wrong, I'm a fool, sorry, I don't know these things. And so, obviously it's a very short summary, we can have more details and interesting, but so Lord Chaitanya himself is showing us how this is the way to please the spiritual master and the devotees. Then here's one example where following etiquette strictly can be misused sometimes and actually counterproductive. This is not stories from the scriptures, it's a story I heard by in a class. So there was a temple in America, and there was a Swami who was going to visit there, a sannyasi, and so all the devotees were kind of excited and they were there to welcome him. And so they were doing kirtan, and they were in the temple room when he arrived, and then he came into the temple room and he was offering his obeisances to the deities, and the devotees, out of excitement and out of respect, they bowed down to him in the temple room in front of the deities. And when he saw that, I don't know who it was, but it's just, we don't need to say, when he saw that, he chastised them really heavily. He said, don't you know that it's an offense to bow down to anybody else in front of the deities unless it's your spiritual master? You know, he's really heavy with them. That it's not correct etiquette to do that. And it does say in Links and Nature Devotion also that unless it's our spiritual master, generally we don't bow down to other people in front of the deities. But then another devotee who was witness to this scene didn't say anything, but he was thinking, yes, Maharaj, but it's also an offense to chastise people in front of the deities. So you're also transgressing etiquette because you're chastising the devotees in front of Krishna. And that is also an offense, and it specifically said one should not chastise people in front of the deities. If we need to do it, we can go outside. And this devotee who was thinking this was also thinking, and so, okay, we have two transgressions of etiquette that are seemingly opposing. But then if we look at it with, okay, what is the purpose of etiquette? The devotees were bowing down to him out of respect, out of admiration, and just, you know, to appreciate that he was there in his elevated position. and they transgressed etiquette that way. But he broke their hearts with his transgression. So which one is worse, to break the heart of the devotees or to show respect in a maybe inappropriate way? So it just demonstrates, I thought it was a very poignant example where we can just be so focused on the rules sometimes that we break people's hearts, and that's not going to inspire anyone, and it's definitely not going to please Krishna. And the goal, as we know, is the goal of all rules and regulations is to always remember Krishna, never forget him, and when we remember him, it's also pleasing, serving, all these things come with that. So, and sometimes, especially maybe in the beginning stages when we're a little bit immature, we just hold on very tightly to these things. I mean, not only in the beginning stages, it can last a long time if we just don't go any deeper. But sometimes we see here, volunteers don't know all the rules and regulations, and generally we know we don't smell flowers before offering them to Krishna. And then in the garden, the volunteer sees a beautiful rose and smells it, and then the devotee, oh, what are you doing? How is that going to be inspiring? So just have to be careful with that, and to understand, use intelligence also, not expect people to know if they don't, or to assess the situation. And then we have a few examples of where devotees so-called transgress etiquette, but for higher purpose, and ultimately that is what was more pleasing in that situation. I don't know if I'll have time to go through all of them, but I find it very inspiring, so I might not. But one of them, for example, is Lord Chaitanya, when he was in Lord Jagannath's temple, he would always stand next to the Garuda Stamba out of humility, because he was thinking that if Krishna will be looking at Garuda, and when he looks at Garuda, he will see me next to him, so hopefully he will see me also. But anyway, there was a very busy festival, and the temple room was full, and one Orisan lady was very small, she couldn't see, so she started climbing up the Garuda Stamba, and she put her feet on Lord Chaitanya's shoulders, and she was holding on to the Garuda Stamba to be able to get the darshan, have the darshan of Lord Jagannath. And Govinda, Lord Chaitanya's servant, he was shocked, and he immediately, told her to get down. So don't you see what you're doing? Get down, you're on the shoulders of a sannyasi, and she hadn't realized. So she got down, and she was very, very apologetic, and then Lord Chaitanya told Govinda off for chastising her, because he said, I should be falling at her feet so that she can bless me with the kind of enthusiasm she has to see Lord Jagannath. So she was standing on the Lord's shoulders, but it was out of eagerness to see and be seen by Lord Jagannath. So Lord Chaitanya was so pleased with her, and we can imagine that he gave her the ultimate perfection of life. We have another very striking example from the life of Ramanujacharya. Ramanujacharya had lots of spiritual masters for different reasons. So I'll have to explain a little bit of history to understand this story. But his first spiritual master, in a sense, was Yamunacharya. This is the first one he got really connected to. But before he could take formal initiation from him, Yamunacharya left the world. And so then Ramanujacharya asked, I can't remember which deity it was that he asked, but what he should do. And he was like, I don't have a spiritual master, I don't know what I should do. And so the deity told him, you should take initiation from Mahapurna. So he was his Diksha guru. But Mahapurna was a disciple of Yamunacharya. So in a sense, Ramanujacharya considered them like his guru, but Mahapurna considered them each other to be godbrothers. So Mahapurna was always offering obeisances to Ramanujacharya, and Ramanujacharya would accept the obeisances from his spiritual master. And someone was asking him, like, how can you do that? That's wrong, Sometimes we see two sannyasis, for example, and one visiting one and one resident one, and the visiting one offers obeisances, and immediately the other one down on the floor. He doesn't take the obeisances. Similarly, if sometimes devotees do that, to us. We shouldn't just stand there, we should also, not think that we deserve to receive like that. But anyway, he was receiving, and somebody asked him why, and he said, well, I know it's wrong, but it pleases him so much to do that because he sees me as a representative of his spiritual master. So by doing this, I'm allowing him to show his love and respect for Yamunachari, so that's why I accept. Then there's another one with another one of his gurus, Goshtipur. So Yamunachari was walking around with some of his disciples, and he met his spiritual master Goshtipurna, so immediately he offered his dandavat obeisances. And they were on the beach, so he was on the burning hot sand. He was lying down on the hot sand. And normally, which we don't seem to follow, at least from what I've seen here, but so it's something that comes out in the scriptures, that we shouldn't rise until the guru tells us to rise. So he was following this, but his guru was not telling him to get up. So he was just lying on the floor for a long time, in the burning sand, and we've all walked on hot sand before. It's very uncomfortable even to run across it, speak of lying on. And long time, and Ramanujacharya's disciples were seeing this, and they didn't know what to do, but they didn't like to see their spiritual master in that way. So finally one of the disciples said to Goshtipurna, he said, please forgive me, I know you're my Param Guru, and I shouldn't really say anything, but don't you have any mercy? How can you leave your disciple suffering like that? And still he didn't tell him to get up. So this disciple, he crawled underneath Ramanujacharya's body, and he lay down on the hot sand, so that his guru didn't have to burn anymore. And at that point, Goshtipurna told them both to get up. So out of love for the spiritual master, this disciple was really willing to maybe commit an offense to Goshtipurna out of love for Ramanujacharya, so that he didn't have to suffer. So this also reveals a very beautiful quality of how a disciple should be willing to do anything, take on any difficulty for the benefit of the spiritual master. I'll just say maybe one more. Lord Chaitanya, his servant was called Govinda, and one day after a very, very long kirtan, Lord Chaitanya was very tired, so he went to lie down in his home, in his residence, but he lay down in the doorway. And Govinda normally, when Lord Chaitanya needs, he would always go and massage his feet. But on this occasion, the Lord's feet were inside, and his body was blocking the entrance. So Govinda couldn't get in to massage the feet of Lord Chaitanya, so he was disturbed because he couldn't do his service, but he really wanted to do his service. And so he was asking Lord Chaitanya, can you please move so that I can go and massage your feet? And Lord Chaitanya said, I'm too tired, I can't move. And again he said, do whatever you like. So Govinda took Lord Chaitanya's cloth and put it over his body, and stepped over his body. And we said at the beginning that it's offensive to touch someone's feet or to show our feet. We'll speak of stepping over someone, speak of stepping over God. But still he did that so that he could do his service for Lord Chaitanya. And then he sort of was massaging, and then he stopped, and Lord Chaitanya was still resting. And then Lord Chaitanya woke up, and he saw Govinda was still there. He said, well, what are you doing here? Have you taken prasadam? Why are you just sitting there? He said, well, you're lying in the doorway, I can't get out. I said, well, how did you get in? You obviously found a way to get in, so why can you not get out? And Govinda, he didn't actually say it, but he was thinking, and Lord Chaitanya knows what everyone is thinking. And Govinda was thinking, well, for your service, I'm willing to commit any offense, even if I have to suffer the consequences. But for my own benefit to go and take prasad, I'm not going to commit such an offense. So, it was very quick, lots of snippets of lots of pastimes, but I just wanted to illustrate how etiquette is present within all of these. In some cases it's misused, in some cases it's correctly used, and sometimes it's put aside for a higher principle. And so they reveal the loving relationships that are taking place between the devotees, amongst the devotees and between the devotees and the Lord. And you can feel the rasa, the flavor, and what they're willing to do, and the kind of spiritual emotions that are taking place, and the spiritual intelligence in which these rules and regulations are being applied. Because these devotees always have in mind, they understand the goal of our proper behavior is to conquer, to conquer the heart of others. So yeah, I thought they were a nice illustration. And there was another part I wanted to talk about, the third thing. Maybe I'll just mention in 2 minutes, but not explain everything. Another aspect of the higher principle that Rohini followed is that Prabhupada said in the purport that even though she was unhappy, still for the festival of Krishna, she agreed to participate and serve enthusiastically all the guests for Krishna's pleasure, for the guest pleasure, and for Nanda and Yashoda's pleasure. So this is sometimes a higher principle to go beyond our own situation and act for the pleasure of Krishna despite how we are feeling, and be enthusiastic despite whatever condition we may be in. And yeah, enthusiasm is a sacrifice sometimes, because we are not fixed. Thank you. We're not fixed, so sometimes we have ups and downs because we're still on, at least for myself, we're still on the mental platform, emotional platform, and some days we're enthusiastic, some days we're not. But relearning to be a servant of Krishna means it's not about how I'm feeling, it's about how I would like to make Krishna feel. And he likes us to be enthusiastic in our service to others, in our service to him. Our spiritual masters are happy to see us enthusiastic in our service. And enthusiasm is the greatest service we can render to each other also, because enthusiasm is contagious. And like we were saying earlier, the goal is to conquer Krishna and the devotees, but not in a material sense, in a spiritual sense, by bringing each other closer together and closer to Krishna. So if we are enthusiastic, we make that sacrifice to be enthusiastic. It's such a great service to everyone else, because then it's contagious. We know if somebody smiles, he sees another person, that second person smiles to someone else. It's contagious like that. So that's very attractive. So it's also that we can take an example from Rohini, that she was unhappy, but she put that aside for Krishna's festival. And in the spiritual world, every day is a festival, and in the temple, every day is a festival. In our heart, every day it can be a festival. If we are enthusiastic, make that sacrifice, Krishna will give us real enthusiasm and reveal everything to us, because he reciprocates according to how we deal with him and surrender to him. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much for listening. The last thing also, it's inappropriate out of etiquette for me to speak in front of senior devotees, but for my purification and because I've been requested, I also accepted to transgress that, and thank you for patiently listening. Does anybody have any corrections or questions or comments I'd like to make?
Thank you for a very nice class, talking about the important topics of etiquette and how our ISKCON society built upon the key tenets of these ideas of etiquette and rules and regulations. We often find that over time what tends to happen is people lose their sort of refreshed ideas of etiquette and following varieties of rules and regulations that are there in Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, even to the point of what colors to wear, what colors not to wear in front of the deities. Especially one of the other ones is like talking in front of the deities. You find constantly people are talking in front of the deities. And it's interesting how we start becoming familiar with each other, devotees, but also then that goes towards the deities. We start becoming familiar with the deities. And I think that's what it is really. It's like we tend to sort of think, they're part of our family.
Just hanging out with them.
We're hanging out with them, so then we can talk like this. It can become sometimes, I suppose, too informal.
Yeah.
And so, question or thoughts, everybody can input. It's like, how can we sort of refresh our memories to say, okay, well, hang on a minute. Yeah, there should be this etiquette. There should be some degree of formality, especially when you're dealing with the altar, the spiritual world, which is just there. And how can we not make offenses to them? Though they are merciful, it's our etiquette to not be offensive in that way. So some thoughts.
Yeah, gradually we have a tendency to cut corners more and more, and once we've cut it like this, then we cut it a bit more, and then there's nothing there. So that's the tendency, because in the material world, tendency is consciousness goes down, what body decomposes, like everything just degrades, and so it's a constant effort to maintain this consciousness and this awareness. Attention basically is like we become inattentive, and we think it's not important, and so we think, I already bowed down 10 times, I'm going out one more time, I won't bow down this time. Just because, often, I don't know, it's laziness is a common word of ignorance, or just, can't get down on the floor again, or just things like that. So this is not very practical in the sense that it is it's constant effort to be attentive, and everything we do, and if we space out during our japa, then we'll space out in our behavior also, and if we're not relax on how we let our mind wander and maybe don't bring it back immediately, or don't bring it at all, or do something else while we're chanting, or have a conversation while we're chanting, or brush our teeth while we're chanting, whatever it is, then a big part is in the chanting of our japa. That would be one thing I can say, not absolute answer, but if we make that effort, then with intention, then naturally, like a hot air balloon, it will elevate our consciousness. And then I've noticed, at least in my life, there's some things like for etiquette that either I would forget or not do because I don't understand or don't know about it or something. But then, if you really make an effort to chant in a pleasing way and with sincerity and with as much attention as you can do, without being lazy, without saying I'll do better tomorrow, your consciousness actually does go up, and there's some things you just can't not do anymore somehow. So that's one thing. Others could say other things, but that would be one thing I could say. And also, it's like spiritual life is not just during 2 hours of japa and the Bhagavatam class. It's like the whole day we have to be making this effort to be conscious and to be focused and thinking about what we're doing and what our goal is. And I forgot the point I was going to make. Sorry. Anyway.
The point you meant about intention is, even Kesha Swami says that at every action we have to evaluate our intention. Every moment we have to evaluate our intention. What is the intention that we're doing this action for? Is it okay, I'm going to get liberated, I'm going to get pious credits, I'm going to get, a pat on the back, I'm going to get whatever.
Yeah.
Is it centered around us? Is it centered around the object of our action? Like that. So it's just, it's as you say, it's sometimes difficult because we can become lazy or inattentive, etc. Nice class, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I remember the point. I'll just say that and I'll stop. Is that because our sadhana is basically the whole day. When we see that out of laziness or out of envy or out of no time or something, we're, for example, well, I don't have time to go out in the temple to have this conversation, so I'll just do it here. But if we're actually trying to be attentive all the time, we should realize, I shouldn't be doing this. Then we have to be strong enough to make the decision not to do it. That's what I wanted to say, why it's whole day is sadhana.
Obviously, obviously when the classes are closed, it's a different situation. Right?
Yeah, it's a different situation. And also we're just talking about in the temple room right now, but there's lots of other things. But having the strength to make the right decisions when we notice we're going to cut a corner, that I'm not going to cut a corner and I'm going to do it even if it's difficult. Okay, anything else? We'll stop there on the list. Thank you very much. Very inspiring to be here. Grandra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Vaishnava Sadhu Sangha ki jai.
Grace Citra Ki jai.
Srila Prabhupada